I now give the floor to His Excellency Lars Løkke Rasmussen, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Denmark.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished delegates, colleagues and friends, the High-Level Week is a welcome reminder that the vast majority of nations, large and small, do seek global unity. That the division we talk so much about is only sought by the few, and this gives me great hope. Yet, as we open the 79th General Assembly, we cannot close our eyes for the fact that conflicts and war are raging across the world. Mr. President, it is utterly unacceptable that a permanent member of the Security Council continues to violate the most basic principles of the UN Charter. Wars of aggression are altering borders, and altering borders is and should remain a thing of the past. An imperial practice that has absolutely no place in the 21st century. Denmark will persist to stand by Ukraine, and we will do it as long as it takes, and we will support a just and lasting peace. The Summit on Peace that was held in Switzerland in June clearly showed that there is strong global support for peace based on the UN Charter. Therefore, we must all use our influence to further the cause of peace. But it must be a peace that does not reward the aggressor for his brute use of force. Otherwise, we set a very, very bad precedent. Otherwise, we undermine the very principle on which the UN was founded. Mr. President, almost a year has passed since Hamas's horrendous attack on Israel the 7th of October. The cruelty and barbarity we witnessed that day was shocking, and I think none of us are able to really comprehend the shock and trauma this day has caused upon Israel, and which will forever symbolize the darkest chapter of the country's history. The terrorism of Hamas sparked a downward spiral of human suffering and regional instability. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic and the human suffering unbearable. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced all over the region. And there's a very, very real risk of an all-out regional war, which would affect not only the people in the region, but all of us. This must end, and this must end now. A ceasefire is urgently needed. All parties should exercise restraint and contribute to de-escalation. And then we should start thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the future. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. The current horrible situation may also contain the seeds of a new beginning. A new beginning leading to a just and lasting peace for all, unleashing the potentials of the whole region, allowing everybody to see a future for themselves and their children, breaking with the vicious circle of violence that has lasted much too long. Such a more promising future can only be based on the two-state solution. And we all need to work together to create the conditions for that two-state solution to materialize. By building the capacity of the Palestinian Authority to take on the role of legitimate and effective government in the future Palestinian state. by stabilizing the West Bank, and by already now start preparing for early recovery and reconstruction of Gaza. I call on all parties to make such a development possible, to the benefit of the people of Israel, to the benefit of the people in Palestine, and thereby to the benefit of the whole region and the world at large. Mr. President, we often talk about Ukraine and Gaza in these halls. But sadly, people are dying and people are suffering from conflicts in many other countries. I'm deeply concerned with the continued fighting in Sudan and the humanitarian consequences for the civilian population. More than 10 million people have been displaced. In Sudan, there is an urgent need for political dialogue and for putting a halt to the conflict. As there is in Yemen, in Haiti, Syria, Afghanistan, Myanmar, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the list tragically goes on and goes on. And in the wake of our collective inability to stop the wars, the respect for international law is slowly undermined. Mr. President, as a small country, Denmark is conscious that our safety and security depend on international rule of law. The respect for basic UN principles, sovereign equality, territorial integrity, and political independence for all states, is fundamental to international peace and security. And as we uphold these principles, the respect for human rights and international humanitarian law must be at the core. Denmark is a strong supporter of the international justice system and the work and independence of the ICC and the ICJ. The ICJ has an important role in the peaceful settlement of disputes, and the ICC is crucial for the global fight against impunity. Without respect for international law, we are looking at a world where might makes right and brute force rules. And this is very, very dangerous. Mr. President, I began by stating that the vast majority of nations, luckily, seek unity and international cooperation. Earlier this week, in the Pact for the Future, we all reaffirmed our commitment to the UN Charter. And we outlined a clear direction towards a transformed system of global governance. The existing system has enabled nations to lift people out of poverty, millions of people, to eradicate diseases, and to advance better education for children around the globe. This is indeed big, big achievements. But after almost 80 years of service, that system is in need of a serious update. Mr. President, it is urgent to reform the international financial architecture. It needs to be more representative. It needs to be more effective. Denmark supports a stronger representation of African countries in the Bretton Woods institutions. We agree that global financial safety nets must support all countries, including the poorest when a major crisis hit. This should not be dependent on voluntary donors' contributions. We agree that all countries, on an equal basis, must be subject to independent, transparent, and accurate credit ratings. And we agree that we need to find sustainable solutions to the high levels of debt faced by many countries. Debt treatment through the common framework needs to be accelerated. All creditors and all lenders should act transparently, and concessional financing be made available. The multilateral development banks have mobilized billions already through reforms. But reforms need to deepen to move from billions to trillions. Looking forward towards the Financing for Development conference in Spain next year, the COP29 and beyond, reform tracks must be made tangible. Solutions should be developed not just for the future, but also for the present. So I wish to take this opportunity to praise Barbados for suggesting concrete actions to help fix some of the more systematic errors of the international financial architecture. We are happy to support the Bridgetown Initiative, and we are proud to work alongside Barbados on greening international financing. We encourage others, including the UN and the international financial institutions, to work together, to be bold, and to achieve the necessary progress on the reform of the international financial architecture. Mr. President, while we reform for a more just financial architecture, we need to sustain levels of development assistance to the poorest countries. So therefore, commitments made should be honored. Denmark remains a member of a club that is absolutely far too exclusive. The club of countries that meet the UN targets of providing 0.7% of our gross national income for official development assistance. It is a good club, but we have too few members, so we invite others to join. In April this year, African heads of state met in Nairobi to call for an ambitious replenishment of the World Bank's International Development Association's IDA. And we have decided to respond to that call. Denmark intends to increase our contribution to IDA with 40%. For the IDA 21 replenishment, we will contribute with $479 million. And we encourage all, whether it's current or new donors, whether they are big and small, to help us reach an ambitious replenishment. Mr. President, in June this year, Denmark was proudly elected to the UN Security Council for the term 25-26. I was personally present and voting here in this grand hall that day, and I wish to thank member states for the strong show of confidence and support. It will be an honor to serve on the Council. As we look forward to our membership, I cannot help but wish that the Council were in better shape, more accountable, more effective, more transparent, and above all, more inclusive and representative. The world needs a Security Council that reflects the world of today, that is able to respond to the security concerns of people all around the globe. To Denmark, it is evident that this calls for an expansion of the Council. We wish to see both more permanent and more elected members. And we wish to limit the use of the veto. Both aspects are long overdue. Mr. President, time is of the essence. The year 2030, that once seemed like a distant dot on the horizon, is now only 6 years away. Yet, only 70% of the SDGs are on track to be realized. And we are far, far from on track to fulfill our climate targets. The accelerating climate crisis must be met with accelerating climate actions. We need more ambitious reductions. We need more support for climate change adaptation. And we need to speed up and we need to scale up climate financing. No country can solve these global challenges alone. But no country is too small or too big to contribute. Everyone is needed. As a long-standing and dedicated supporter of global cooperation, Denmark, I can assure you, will continue to do our part. We will deliver on promises made, and we will push for more ambitious targets and for concrete actions. And we will do that for the present and for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Denmark.